Vamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Ragunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Sha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishapanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Priye Panchakalpa Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna. Is everything okay with the sound? There's a bit of a lag that I was hearing before I start. Is the sound? Kind of.
Yeah, Mataji, go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. There was something, yes, from my side. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll just jump right in because, like I mentioned, it is a huge topic, actually, of, what does it mean to forgive? What is worth forgiving? Why we should forgive, all of these things. So, of course, as all of you know, because I know we're speaking to devotees here, you're well aware of the symptoms of Kali Yuga and the quarrel and hypocrisy that take place in Kali Yuga. And unfortunately, because some of our members of ISKCON are not pure devotees, meaning many of us actually are not Uttama Adhikaris, are not on the highest platform of devotional service, because this mission, Lord Chaitanya's mission, is about saving the fallen souls, which means we don't get purified overnight. It is a process of purification. And so there are people in our movement that Lord Chaitanya compares to ripe mangoes. There are sour mangoes, there are bitter mangoes, meaning that there are people on different levels of advancement in terms of awakening the sweetness of bhakti within their hearts. And so, of course, we're all mangoes in the sense that we are all connected to the tree of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission. But some of us are more advanced than others, and so we exhibit different anarthas. And one of the anarthas of envy and anger and greed can sometimes cause us to quarrel and be hypocrites. This is just a reality of what happens. I hope that no one becomes discouraged by this, and the faster that we accept the reality that just as we have anarthas that we're working through, other devotees within the movement also have anarthas that they're working through, that we have to tolerate. Srila Prabhupada was once asked, what could destroy, can anything, stop the Sankirtan movement? And his reply was that externally, nothing, Maya Devi, the three modes, no demon can stop the Sankirtan movement. But when devotees quarrel and criticize and do not cooperate from within the movement, he said that is the only thing that can stop the Sankirtan movement, is when we allow our anarthas to actually surface too much, when we allow them to actually control us, then that can very much get in the way, because it's so important that we work together. One devotee can only accomplish so much. Of course, if that devotee is Srila Prabhupada, he can accomplish a lot. But of course, he accomplished so much with the help of his disciples. He empowered them. But through the help of and so it really takes all of us working together to make this Sankirtan movement flourish. which means we also have to learn to tolerate each other. Anyways, I think all of you already know these things in many ways, but we'll get into, what does it mean? How do we actually get along? It's so like this very important characteristic of tolerance, or titiksha is so important. And of course, you don't have to be absolutely in love with every devotee that you meet. There may be devotees whose characteristics and conditionings, or just their nature, just doesn't match yours, and you don't have to be best friends in the sense that you open your heart, you share your life with every devotee that you meet. But so it's important to find like-minded association, and at the same time maintain an extraordinarily respectful appreciation of every Vaishnava, even if it's someone that rubs you the wrong way or you disagree with, understanding that that person is also a devotee of Krishna. And even people that are not practicing devotees of Krishna, because we understand that every living entity is by nature Jivara Svarabhoy Krishna Nityadas. Every living being is eternally a servant of Krishna, and that way we respect all living beings, even if they're exhibiting the worst, lowest qualities. So we are respectful towards all, understanding Krishna's in their heart and that they're actually devotees of Krishna. But that doesn't mean that it also doesn't mean that you have to be, really let every living being into your heart in the sense of associating closely with them. And you should be warned that you will be tested. This is actually what I've seen over the last 15 years of my practice of Krishna consciousness, and being working very closely in the movement. I myself have been tested, and to be honest with you, is one of the main reasons why I feel so inspired to speak on this topic, because it's a topic I've gone so deep into. Because there was a time when I felt so hurt by a devotee. I was feeling angry and resentful for many years, actually, and it was burning me up from inside. And because of that, and because of with the help of so many great Vaishnavas, working through that resentment, working through that anger, has helped me to grow so much in this lifetime. And so it's something that I've seen so many other devotees, as I mentioned, I think in the beginning, how holding on to anger and resentment towards others, especially towards Vaishnavas, really eats away at us internally. And it can cause us to commit the first offense against the holy name, the worst offense, which is Vaishnava Aparad. And the interesting thing is, it may be because somebody actually offended us, but then in response, we offend the person. But when somebody offends us, it gives us the amazing opportunity to exhibit this quality of the qualities of forgiveness and tolerance. But because we have false egos, the false ego does not go away until some of the higher stages of bhakti. I believe in the stage of bhava bhakti, only in the 7th stage does the false ego go away. Even anartha-nivritti, the false ego still remains a little bit after anartha-nivritti. So, don't deny the power of the false ego. So the false ego causes us to react, to be offended if somebody offends us. But then, it starts with this test that this opportunity that we're given starts with the false ego being triggered. And it causes us, we respond with anger, with frustration, with why would you do that to me? How could this happen to me? We sometimes fall into the victim mentality, or we sometimes blame, how could this happen to me, Krishna? Sometimes we'll blame Krishna, right? And then it causes us to criticize others. We cannot always control our emotions, because the reality is until you're a really, really advanced devotee, the false ego still comes in and can affect us. And so we cannot always control our emotions. We may be triggered with anger, with hatred, with envy, with frustration, things like that. But what we can control is what we do when those emotions come up. And we can stop at that point of frustration to process and to forgive, and to try to understand what can I learn from this? How can I grow closer to Krishna through this? How can I learn to love every living being, including one that my false ego perceives to be an enemy, right? Because for a Vaishnava has no friends or enemies, because they're actually the well-wishing friend of every living being, like that. So for us that is not a stage that you can just jump to, but we have to internally work on these things. So the process of forgiveness actually is not an external thing of saying, oh, Prabhu, I forgive you, while internally you're like, oh, I can't believe it, I'm so mad, It's really, the process of forgiveness is something that happens internally. And until you can look at someone that you have felt wronged by, and every time you think of them, or every time you see them, you feel really internally like they're well-wisher, like you really want what's best for them. You have no hatred or anger towards them anymore. These are not things that you can always, again, control, these internal emotions. But when one comes to the stage of really feeling warm and fuzzy towards someone else, to put it bluntly, as we say in Krishna consciousness, to really be someone's well-wisher. Prabhupada would always respond in his letters saying, you're ever well-wisher, right? Prabhupada is that example of really being everyone's well-wisher. And so so we really have to stop ourselves when we get to this point of when we're noticing these negative emotions coming up towards another person or towards another Vaishnava, that's the time that we take to process it. And when through the process of forgiveness, which sometimes can happen in a moment, or sometimes can take a lot of time, because in one moment you might work on really processing, working on forgiving that person internally, but then you might see that person a week later, a month later, a year later, and when you see them again, your stomach churns. You feel like you want to run in the other direction, or you feel, how dare they? It just reminds you of something they did to you or whatever. Then you should know that you may have forgiven in a moment, but that forgiveness needs to continue being worked on. So so the thing is really the only way that you can avoid the test of feeling resentment towards another devotee is to either already be on the topmost level of Krishna consciousness, or to not practice Krishna consciousness at all. Because the whole, sadhu sangha is so important. And of course, not only any sadhu sangha, but we want to be close to really senior devotees. We want to be close to advanced devotees. And we want to create intimate, loving friendships amongst the Vaishnavas, like meaning that we don't just listen to classes together, but we share our hearts with one another. And that causes one to be very vulnerable. And it's actually the people that hurt you the most are the ones that you open yourselves up to and be vulnerable. They have more opportunity to hurt us. So you can completely close yourselves off from sadhu sangha, and then you won't be tested in this way. You can avoid the test, but then you won't make very much spiritual advancement at all. So we actually need to develop intimate, loving relationships with Vaishnavas. And that gives us the opportunity that it will happen, that sometimes someone actually intentionally does something to slight us, to hurt us. And sometimes someone doesn't even mean to. We just have a false ego and happen to be offended, even if someone doesn't mean to offend us. And in either case, we have to work on actually forgiving them. So, and of course, the more advanced devotee you're associating with, if you are angry and resentful towards them and end up criticizing them, the worse the offense is on your part. So just because somebody offends you doesn't mean you have to offend them. We'll discuss now a little bit on how to forgive, and also what forgiveness is and what forgiveness isn't, because a lot of people have a misconception about what forgiveness actually means. They think, oh, I have to just like forgive and forget and then let someone walk all over me again. No, it's not like that. So first, let's talk about, why. We'll go a little bit deeper into the topic, pulling out some quotes from the Shastra about, why forgiveness is so important, and it's just so foundationally important. So I have a few quotes here that I have written down from the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, the duty of a Brahmana is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. So what is the main reason why we should learn to be forgiving? It's because it pleases Krishna. It makes Krishna happy. We should learn this. So whether or not you identify as a Brahmana, Prabhupada wanted all of us to cultivate some Brahminical qualities, because actually a Vaishnava naturally has all Brahminical qualities and is naturally above a Brahmana. So it's important, even if you're like, no, I'm not a Brahmana, I'm a Kshatriya, or I'm a Shudra, still should try to cultivate this quality of forgiveness because it's pleasing to Krishna. I'm not reading all the Sanskrit because there's quite a few verses I'm quoting here. There's another one from the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam where it says, the Lord is very satisfied with his devotee when the devotee greets other people with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. So he says other people, not just devotees, that we greet all other people with tolerance. So of course, forgiveness and tolerance go hand in hand so much. I feel like there's an obvious connection there. So, and then this is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to one of his disciples where he says, I'm glad to learn that your cooperation for the society is appreciated by the authorities. We should learn to forget and forgive minor incidents, because whenever there are two men in a place, there is always some misunderstanding. So not only is it pleasing to Krishna, but it's pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. Another reason why we should learn forgiveness. And then this is a beautiful quote from the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, a sadhu, a devotee, is never angry. Actually, the real feature of devotees who undergo tapasya and austerity is forgiveness. So forgiveness is a result of tapasya and austerity. And sometimes if we do tapasya and austerity with the wrong attitude, we become hard-hearted. Prabhupada has also explained that can be a side effect of doing tapasya and austerity for the sake of the false ego, to think one better than others. But the real result of doing proper tapasya and austerity is that it softens the heart and causes one to be forgiving. And then, of course, a couple of very important famous verses are Titikshava Karunika Suridam Sarvadehinam Ajatasha Travashanta Sadhava Sadhu Bhushana. Sorry, I couldn't remember. And so this is, what canto is that from? I forget which canto it's from. Sorry. This says the symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. Which canto is it? Third canto? Thank you. My husband is helping me out. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. And so these are some of the reasons why forgiveness is important. It's why it's encouraged, how it's encouraged so much in the Shastra. One of my favorite verses from the Shastra, of course, many of these, again, are easier to say than do, but Tatenukampam Shushamikshamana Punjane Vatmakritam Vipakam Vibhakvapurvir Viranam Namaste Jivetayo Muktipade Sadayavak. That this verse specifically talks about, not only the importance of forgiveness, but why it's actually good for you, Not only is it pleasing to Krishna and Prabhupada and, it's all these good qualities, but it's actually really good for you because by learning to tolerate whatever difficulties come our way and maintaining this mood of offering respectful obeisances to Krishna and the Vaishnavas through whatever difficulties, understanding that whatever difficulties come our way is just some, going through some past reactions, some karmic reactions, and then we remain grateful through going through that. And it says that one who can tolerate whatever difficulties happen, that the doors to the kingdom of God are open to them, that liberation becomes their rightful claim. And so pretty much that verse is saying that by learning to tolerate and forgive, you can go back to God. So that's a pretty good incentive. And so these are some of the reasons why why forgiveness is good for you. And now I want to talk about why resentment is actually so bad for us. Because sometimes we think, oh, I'm entitled. This person wronged me. I am entitled to be angry towards them because they wronged me. Like, even if someone did the most horrible act that actually is wrong. Like I said, sometimes it may just be our false ego reacting to someone that really means us no harm. But sometimes somebody actually does a horrible, harmful thing towards us, and we think we have the right to resent them. But the problem is that when we hold on to anger and resentment, it's like, my spiritual master explains that it's like holding on to a burning hot coal with the intention of throwing it at another person to get back at them. But what happens when you hold on to a hot coal? Who actually gets burned? You do. And if any of you have ever felt slighted by someone, whether it's a devotee or not, you may be familiar. It actually causes the heart to burn. It causes the stomach to, like, there's actually been some medical studies on how holding on to resentment towards others can cause cancer and all kinds of physical difficulties. What to speak, of course, it disturbs your mind, but that then it enters from the subtle body into the gross body and can cause illness when we hold on to like an intense amount of anger or resentment towards someone. So, and of course, when you are angry at someone, you are meditating on their bad qualities. That becomes your meditation, right? Is that a devotee doesn't like to meditate on others' bad quality. A devotee likes to meditate and see the good in every living being, right? And it's explained that we absorb the qualities that we observe in others. And so if we are meditating on others' good qualities, if we think of our gurus, our Shiksha gurus and inspiring devotees, and we just glorify them, and internally and externally, we just think of, oh, wow, they're so amazing. I want to be like them. It fans the spark and it fans those qualities within ourselves, because actually we have all of those good qualities. That's the nature of the soul, is to be filled with all of these magnanimous qualities. But of course, we become covered over by the false ego, so they're not always exhibiting themselves. But when we appreciate good qualities in others, it brings out the dormant good qualities in ourselves and makes them more visible to ourselves and to others. And the same is true for when we focus on and meditate and brew over someone else's bad quality and our anger towards another. Oh, they did that to me. Oh, they're like this, they're like that. Then it actually fans our own materialistic conditioning, our lower qualities, our lower nature. It brings that out. And so I want to read one quote from Srila Prabhupada, another quote that's really beautiful about why anger and resentment is so bad for us. He says, anger and resentment are due to ignorance, due to material attachment. We have to solve the problem through knowledge and purification. So we should understand what Prabhupada is saying here is talking about that our anger and resentment are due to material attachment, meaning anger. When we feel anger and resentment towards others, it's really just a product of our false ego influencing us, right? The false ego wants to be better than others. The false ego wants respect. The false ego doesn't want to offer respect to all others. The false ego doesn't want to be more tolerant than a tree. The false ego doesn't want to be more humble than a blade of grass. The false ego wants to be the best. The false ego wants respect, right? And so, because of our material attachment to respect and to being treated nicely, to be treated with great, awe and reverence or whatever, then the false ego becomes offended when that doesn't happen. Give me one, honey. Can you grab my computer charger? I don't want my computer back. So. Actually, we're running out of time. I was going to tell the story of Sachimata and Advaitacharya. I'll just tell it real quick as an example of Sachimata, Lord Chaitanya's mother, once became angry with Advaitacharya because Advaitacharya, actually, what happened was, even before going back to... Actually, no, I'll just tell it's one of my, it's such a nice pastime, but I don't want to get too into it. I think this was during the Mahaprakash Leela that Lord Chaitanya was giving blessings and benedictions to all the Vaishnavas. And some of the devotees were like, what about Sachimata? What about your mother? What a great Vaishnavi. Everyone loved and respected her so much. They're like, are you going to give her Krishna Prema? And Lord Chaitanya's response shocked everyone. He said, no, actually, I cannot give Sachimata Krishna Prema. And they're like, what? What happened? Like, she's Yashoda Mai from the spiritual world, What do you mean you can't give her Krishna Prema? And he explained that Advaitacharya, because Lord Chaitanya's older brother Vishwarup was influenced by Advaitacharya to take sannyas, and then Advaitacharya, she kind of blamed Advaitacharya for also then influencing her son her other son, Nimai, Lord Chaitanya, to also then take sannyas. And she became, or no, actually this happened before he took sannyas, but she was afraid that he was going to influence Lord Chaitanya to take sannyas. And because he had done that for her older son. And so then the only thing she ever said about him was that he's not Advaita, but he is Dvaita, because Advaita means dualistic, non-dualistic, and Dvaita means dualist. So she was calling him duplicitous because he influenced her oldest son to take sannyas, and she was upset about that. She didn't want to lose, who would want to lose the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vishwarup? Vishwarup is Balaram, also Nityananda is also Balaram, but so anyways, but then of course she took the dust of Advaitacharya's feet and apologized sincerely. She didn't just say the words, "Oh, I'm sorry, please forgive me." She sincerely, from the bottom of her heart, apologized, took the dust of Advaitacharya's feet, glorified him, and begged forgiveness, falling on the ground in ecstasy and all of these ecstatic things. Of course, he forgave her. And then Lord Chaitanya said, "Okay, now I can give you Krishna prema." And this is really such an important lesson, that even that Krishna chooses not to bestow Krishna prema on even an exalted devotee who makes an offense towards another one of his devotees. Even someone in the position of his mother, he wouldn't and so there's a very important lesson on why holding on to resentment that causes us to criticize others, even if it's just a slight criticism, so we should be careful. So let's get into, we just have 15 minutes left. So much more to talk about. Okay, let's get into, what is forgiveness? So, and what is not forgiveness? Like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions about what forgiveness actually is. Maybe let's start with the topic of what is not forgiveness. So forgiveness does not mean that we make a wrong right. So if somebody, an extreme example is this, somebody rapes somebody else, to say, "Oh, I forgive you, what you did actually wasn't wrong." That is not forgiveness. To say that something that is wrong is actually right, because we can hate the sin but not the sinner. You can say what they did is actually severely wrong, but you can still forgive a person. So it doesn't necessarily mean that what someone did to you wasn't wrong. And also in the same way, it doesn't mean, forgiveness doesn't mean that you condone unkindness. It doesn't mean that you condone cruelty. It doesn't mean that you say, "Oh, it's okay, you can mistreat me, or you can mistreat anyone. I'll let you walk all over me and treat me horribly." That's not what forgiveness is, actually. Forgiveness doesn't mean putting your boundaries down, letting your boundaries down. You need to oftentimes keep boundaries against and that's like a whole nother conversation. What are boundaries? How do you keep them up? And what are healthy boundaries, and all of these things. And it also doesn't necessarily mean reconciling a relationship. If there's some relationship that's just so toxic, forgiving someone doesn't mean that you have to let someone back into your life. Oftentimes it does, it can, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So now that we've talked a little bit about what forgiveness isn't, that let's now discuss what forgiveness actually is. So forgiveness means that you are returning unkind acts with kindness, that you treat someone with kindness that has treated you unkindly. Whether it's just perceived or whether it's a reality, that you're actually kind towards others. these are just some notes that I from this workshop I took with Mahatma Prabhu, looking back on it. He said, forgiveness means giving up hope for a better past, because you can't change the past. Sometimes we hope, oh, I wish it had turned out like this. You cannot change the past. Living in the past, and just lamenting over the past, it's because of the influence of the mode of ignorance, actually. So you can't change what's happened. And it also, forgiveness means to get out of the victim mentality of thinking, oh, this happened to me, I can't believe I was treated this way, just feeling bad for oneself, and actually becoming forgiving someone who has wronged you actually turns you into a hero in a little way, and it brings out our incredible devotional quality. It's actually the jewel of the devotee is to act with forgiveness. And really, forgiveness means letting go of resentment, bitterness, and anger, right? And like I mentioned, a lot of times those feelings will come up when you actually can look at a person and not feel that anger or resentment towards them anymore. Then you've forgiven them, actually. And it also means letting go of the need to be right or have justice served, because we are not the controllers. Krishna will have justice served if in the way that he wants it to happen, and so that's a complex topic. If someone's a rapist, it doesn't mean that you just sit quietly and let them continue hurting others, causing harm to others. But it means that you do your part to to protect others from being hurt, but at the same time recognize that Krishna is the supreme controller, and that he will work in that person's life to correct them. Just like, right, so the focus is, when we're working through the process of forgiveness, it's not about changing the other person, because we can never control another living being. We cannot force someone to apologize. So there's also a misconception that you can only forgive someone that's sorry for what they've done. But that's not true. You can forgive someone even if they're not sorry, even if they feel like they had the right to do something wrong to you. That we still can act towards them with kindness and forgive them. So, yeah, and as it's said so many times, I'm sure you're familiar with the saying that we should not be mad at the instrument of our karma. And this is an important point. So just like we cannot control another person's actions, we cannot control how someone's acted towards us, but we can only control how we will act back towards them. We may not even be able to control our emotional reactions, but we can act with intelligence. So there's some important things that we have to understand internally to help facilitate forgiveness happening. And one is to understand that our karma comes to us, and the lessons that we are meant to learn in Krishna consciousness, even if it's not just a karmic reaction, are oftentimes they come through other living entities, right? There's the three different types of suffering that we're all Adhyatmikari, Bodhikari, Devika, but oftentimes the greatest suffering comes through other living entities. And so it's very important that we try to not be angry at somebody else for being used as an instrument to teach us an important lesson that we're meant to learn. And to recognize, okay, they have their things that they need to work through. But because I am reacting so negatively, let me just see, what can I do to change, focus on my reaction? I cannot change someone else's reaction, but let me pray to Krishna and work on forgiving this person. So it's important to take into consideration also trying to see things from another person's perspective, especially if it's someone that we know to some extent, that we usually those are the people that have the greatest ability to offend us, again, because we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to those who are close to us. So then when we know someone so deeply, we also can understand what some of their conditionings are. And we should feel sympathy for them. Oh, just see, they become so overcome by anger. And I know what it's like to become overcome by anger, and I hate, maybe that person hasn't received the love and the care that they're longing for. And because of that, they react in a non-loving and a non-caring way towards me. Let me feel sympathy for the fact that they haven't received the nourishing, loving care that they so much crave. And that they're just helplessly reacting towards me because of their own conditionings, because of the influence of the lower modes of material nature. So in that way, we try to, in terms of just, we see in ourselves that we become overwhelmed by our lower nature sometimes, and we forgive others when they become overwhelmed by their lower natures. And we also have to understand how, our own conditionings play a role in the reactions of the false ego of anger and all of that. So what do we do? I'll end with these last few things. And I highly encourage you, if you ever find yourself in a situation, and again, you will, if you continue on the path of bhakti and you continue intimately associating with devotees, which you should. We need that intimate association. You will find yourself in a situation, or if right now you are thinking of someone that has maybe wronged you, that you have some negative feelings towards. These are some suggestions of steps you can take. So again, first, it's to try to just understand intellectually why forgiveness is important, why you should forgive them, why maybe they're conditioned to react in a negative way. And then immediately you should take shelter and pray for help. You can take shelter of Krishna, of course. You can take shelter of Lord Nrsingadev to please protect you from anger and these negative emotions. And I especially recommend praying to our acharyas of forgiveness, who are Prahlad and Nityananda, and also Haridas Thakur are known. Of course, we don't have time to get in those pastimes, but I'm guessing many of you know these wonderful, extraordinary devotees who not only were wronged by others, but all three of them, Prahlad, Nityananda, and Haridas Thakur, were all literally, there were people trying to kill them and murder them and cause them to suffer. Not just insulting them, but like insulting every aspect of them. The greatest insult is to try to kill someone, right? And when Prahlad was being beaten through 22 marketplaces, he was praying while he was being beaten. He was praying the whole time. He wasn't praying for Krishna to protect him. He was praying, please protect these offenders. Please protect these people that are trying to kill me from their own sinful reactions. Please forgive them. He was begging Krishna to forgive them, which means, the great saints, they're already naturally forgiving. They don't have to work through the process of forgiveness. It's just naturally, he had no animosity, no negativity towards them. And of course, Nityananda and Jagai and Madhai and Prahlad and Lord Nrsingadev, of course, they were all in this mood of actually wanting to benefit their offenders. So we can pray to these great personalities to help us through the process of forgiveness and beg them. I have no control over this anger and resentment. Please help me, help soften my heart, help me to forgive this living being who is your devotee that you love so much. And it also helps for us to see every living being, to try at least to see every living being as Krishna's devotee and therefore worthy of forgiveness. And of course, it's important that we work on meditating on being their well-wisher, because the mind conditioned by anger and resentment will do the opposite. It turns anyone that wrongs us, the false ego influences the mind to identify that person as an enemy and to be angry towards that person. But we want to actually combat, we actually want to go against the false ego and against our enemy mind and encourage it to wish, to think good thoughts about that person, to actually like think of that person's good qualities, how dear they are to Krishna, what wonderful things they've done. It doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean that they haven't necessarily also done bad things, right? But so it doesn't mean to discount the fact that they may have done horrible, cruel things, you know. But we can also, we can focus and meditate on that they do have good qualities, but even deeper than that is being their well-wisher, wanting them to overcome their conditionings. Pray, and that involves a very powerful activity. When you find yourself angry at someone, you can go to Krishna and not just pray to Krishna or Prahlad Maharaj or Nityananda or others, you know, for you to help you forgive, but you can pray on their behalf. You can pray, please, Krishna, help this person to overcome whatever obstacles are causing them to misbehave. Please, Krishna, forgive them. Following the footsteps of Haridas Thakur, begging Krishna to forgive them, not just to forgive them, but to right their wrongs, you know. And then the last thing I would suggest is, because again, we may sometimes go through internally, going through prayer, trying to be the well-wisher, trying to actually feel good thoughts and feelings towards another person who has wronged us, but that every time it comes up again and again, and that anger and resentment shows its ugly head to us, that we take a step back and internally go through this process of meditating on being their well-wisher, on praying for them, on trying to appreciate how the good things they may have done for you and for others. And the last thing is to be patient with yourself, because we are not the supreme controllers. So the process of forgiveness, you know, we show Krishna we are trying, and then Krishna empowers us with the qualities, with these great Vaishnava qualities of forgiveness and tolerance. So I'll end there. I hope that answers the question of why forgiveness is essential to our spiritual advancement. And if there are any questions, we have 1 minute, but I'm happy to stay for an extra like 5 minutes if anyone wants. If there's any questions or comments or corrections, I'm open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji, for enlightening class. I don't know, I have so many questions, but let us give devotees a chance. This is a very wonderful topic, and some of the questions you already answered, Mataji. Thank you so much. And anybody has any questions? No, I'm sure everybody has questions. So please go ahead if you think you can, ask Mataji and get answer, learn something from today's class.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. My name is Krishnakanta, and thank you very much for bringing up such a nice quality and speaking about importance of forgiveness. Not a question, or not like a direct question, but I was wondering, Arjuna killing all the Kauravas. He forgave and then he fulfilled his duty, that is to kill them as per Krishna's instructions. So he forgave, maybe he forgave them, but again he had to fulfill the duty, which is to kill them. So is that really forgiveness or punishing them, or maybe, for example, even a material life, if you see a judge punishing a thief to put in a jail, is there forgiveness followed by the duty to reform the thief, or how do we understand that?
So forgiveness means really letting go of resentment and anger towards somebody else, right? So Arjuna fought on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as a service to Krishna, because Krishna asked him to. And actually, even before Arjuna had already forgiven, even before Krishna spoke to Arjuna, Arjuna had already forgiven them, because he said, I don't want to fight this battle. I don't want to kill my kinsmen. He didn't want to kill his relatives, even the relatives that had wronged him, right? If he was so angry towards them for what they'd done, he wouldn't have any problem killing them. But it's actually because he had already forgiven them that he didn't want to fight the battle. But then Krishna convinced him to fight. So he wasn't fighting out of resentment towards them. He was fighting to please Krishna. And so it's, again, forgiveness is something that happens internally. It's not, in certain circumstances, we actually have to, as an instrument of Krishna, if Krishna's asking us to take action against someone, but that doesn't mean that we have to have ill feelings towards them. Again, going back to this point of hating the sin, but not the sinner, is still having love for the living being that has, so you gave good examples, but what was the other one you gave the example of? Arjuna, and who else was it?
In a material context, if you see a judge punishing a thief.
Oh yeah, judge. Yeah. So a judge punishing the thief. The judge doesn't have to, they're just doing their duty, like you said, They don't necessarily have to hate the thief. They just say, hey, you did wrong. Now this is your punishment. And they can still be, the well-wisher and want, to see the other person. And sometimes we have to be, that's, Krishna put the laws of karma in place because we actually have to be corrected. The judge is just an instrument for the law of karma happening. So, but that doesn't mean he has to be angry or hateful towards the people. He's just saying, hey, you stole something. These are the consequences. Now you have to deal with the consequences. But I love you.
Sure. Maybe if you have one more minute, I have another question.
Yeah, that's fine.
So forgiveness, we've heard in the context of treating others. I mean, forgiving other devotees, non-devotees. How about the self? So if for example, I offended someone, should I forgive myself? Or I've heard devotees, some classes, everywhere in ISKCON, that be lenient to other devotees, but be very strict with yourselves.
Yeah.
So
that's
should I forgive?
Excellent question. Yeah. That's a whole nother topic that I didn't touch on because but forgiveness includes that we sometimes have to forgive ourselves. And yeah, we just don't have time to get into that topic. That we have to forgive ourselves. Otherwise we'll drive ourselves crazy with guilt and self-anger, self-hatred, that just causes us to be more self-absorbed and not absorbed in Krishna, not absorbed in thinking of Krishna. So actually we do have to learn to forgive ourselves, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you condone bad things if we've done bad things in the past, or if we have some negative anarthas still causing us trouble. But we do have to also learn to forgive ourselves. I'm glad you brought that up, but it's a more complex topic of forgiveness.
And just one last not a comment, but something I'm noting down is drawing parallels between the first answer and the second answer, which is if I committed an offense, then I forgive myself, but then I do the duty of maybe do some kind of an atonement, or maybe
Yes.
repent the offense and then try not to repeat. So
of course, yeah. So forgiveness doesn't mean that you condone a wrong activity. It means that you say, oops, I messed up. And then you pick yourself up and do what you can to try to of course there's repentance and also prevention of trying to not do the offense again, whatever it is. So thank you. Beautiful comments and questions. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Prabhuji, 1 second. Mataji, Lalit Prasad Prabhuji is Prabhupada's disciple. He's blessing us every time joining our class. If you remember, I told you maybe 4 or 5 months back.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I think my wife met you in Alachua, and I think you invited her. But at any point, we're in Cincinnati, and I hope that you can come. We have a center, and somehow next time you're in Cincinnati, maybe you can talk to my wife, Kishori, and we can meet with you at some point. It will be wonderful.
Yeah, I remember meeting both of you in Alachua many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So I don't know. Okay. So my wife wants to ask you something. Oh, she wants the video. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for the class. This is a really important topic, and I feel like something that's not really spoken very much about in Krishna consciousness. But we all need help with this, especially me. And I commonly get to the point of like understanding another person's or another soul's. I understand that they are suffering, and I can have compassion for that. And I can, practice well-wishing, but it seems that I'm still stuck with sometimes not being able to get to the point of really forgiving them, because then I will be around them again, and then everything becomes inflamed, and I just try not to react. And I know you suggested that we pray to the acharyas, that we pray to Prahlad and Nityananda, Prabhu, for help with that. And so, thank you very much for those suggestions. And I'm wondering if you have, since you've worked through this yourself, this is a grueling process. And I'm wondering if there's anything else that you can suggest that will help get from that point of just understanding and compassion, but actually really like fully letting go and fully forgiving. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say the first thing that comes up in my mind is the importance of putting up boundaries. Actually, that was for me, because I felt like one of the people I had to forgive, they just kept hurting me again and again and again and again. And it wasn't a relationship I was ready to cut off, because it was a family member. And I didn't want to just be, but I learned how to put up boundaries and say, look, I love you, but you cannot treat me this way. And if you do, this is going to be my response. I'm going to distance myself. So sometimes we actually have to put up a boundary and express to someone, I love you. I am your well-wisher. I really want what's best for you. I understand that, whether or not you realize that you're hurting me, you are, and that I need to, for the benefit of our relationship, for the benefit of me not making offenses towards you, I need to actually, say that you can't treat me like this, or when you treat me like this, I'm just not going to tolerate it. I'm gonna hang up the phone, not because I don't like you, but I just don't like being talked to. So I'm giving an example from my own life, but that was something that Mahatma Prabhu helped me work through, because I felt like I was just trying to forgive and forgive and forgive, but I kept being hurt. And when you continue to be hurt, it's harder to forgive. So you first have to put yourself in a situation by putting up boundaries where you make it clear that you're not going to allow someone to continue hurting you, even if they don't intend to. And then it becomes a lot more easy to forgive them. And I speak from experience on that one. So yeah. Thank you for your wonderful question. I hope we can meet we'll probably be visiting Cincinnati sometime this summer. So I hope that I can meet many of you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful. I don't know. Hare Krishna.
Anybody has any other questions?
Mataji, I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to know if a person, like I'm very vulnerable, okay, because I am alone. So people take advantage of me. I hurt all the time.
Mataji, I think your internet isn't so strong. I can't hear you so clearly or very much at all. Maybe you can put your question in the chat.
Yeah, Mataji, there is something happening in the central zone. I never had internet problem. I lost you maybe a couple of minutes in the middle of your class.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, Mataji, whatever you can put in chat. And that would be nice.
Maybe somebody else can ask a question while Mataji is putting something in the chat. And then
Mataji, so Mataji, I will ask a couple of questions. I really want some answer. Actually, one question is, while we are conditioned, we can analyze if we are in a good mind, good state of mind. We can analyze the way you are talking about. If I am not able to think or whatever I'm supposed to do, because when I suffer enough, then I have to come to my senses. Oh, this is not the way I should do. I should consult someone, do something. Then I should take advice, devotees association. But what do I do? Anybody, for the matter of what is the thing will purify me or come to that stage? Like you have analyzed the things very right way. But when my brain is not working, why I should be angry? And because I am affected, I am conditioned. I'm giving an example. So I am in a different state of mind. So how do I come out to think that clearly? So is it chanting will help, or as you said, going to a devotee, talking to him? We are not Haridas Thakur or Sivas Pandit. Also, he had Sivas.
oh yeah, he's a great example. Yeah.
So they are. Then again, there are many examples where like Rupa Goswami punishing, Jiva Goswami, they don't complain. They take it, okay, this is my fate. This is what I deserve. They just stop it there. And, and next day people come back and just ask them, you are not at fault. Even the person who committed mistakes, he comes and, begs for forgiveness. So, but how do we manage that situation? Then we come to a good state of mind where we can ask questions or we can take necessary actions not to repeat certain. Type of again.
That's a great question, and I appreciate the point that we cannot artificially try to be on like Rupa Goswami's or Prahlad Maharaj's platform. It's only by Krishna's mercy we become that naturally tolerant. So really the answer is that even if internally we feel some immediate reaction, that we don't externally react. Because the external reaction is like, again, you cannot control the internal immediate reaction. Only be like the great souls, they just naturally are not affected. But so we may have some internal reaction but it doesn't need to manifest externally. So it's so important that if you observe, oh, I'm feeling some reactive thing, the immediate wanting to jump and criticize and defend, the fight or flight mode, it's really a symptom of Rajaguna, of this like, let me defend, how dare you, whatever. And so when that comes up, we should take a moment, whatever it is that you need to do, whether it's chanting is always a great thing. It works, but sometimes actually the mind is so angry. You can sit and chant, but you can't hear the holy names at all. And to be honest with you, it's actually not a good thing when you're feeling really, really agitated to go talk to another devotee about it. Because what happens oftentimes is then you will criticize. So the best thing to do is to wait, do whatever you need to do to chill out. To put it in American terms, you need to chill. Whether that's in a mode of goodness way, not in a mode of ignorance way. Chilling is like, oh, let me just get drunk and try to forget about my problems. That's not what we mean. But do what you can do to calm the mind. And oftentimes it takes time. So before you react to something, to take some time, however much time you need, and to connect deeply with Krishna and with the mode of goodness, because it's the mode of passion that's causing us to be reactive. So we have to somehow or other resituate ourselves in the mode of goodness, offer some prayers, and then react when you feel like you're in the proper mindset. If you know you're not in the right mindset, then you say, excuse me, we will finish this discussion later, because right now, if I open my mouth, I might say something really bad wrong, so you excuse yourself, and you take as much time as you need to calm down and to re-enter that grounded, centered state in the mode of goodness, accessing the mercy of our acharyas, accessing the mercy of Krishna, connecting with the holy names, and then even hopefully transcending the mode of goodness, and then addressing it in a Krishna conscious way, because we're conditioned to be reactive, So the best thing is internally you might react, but externally, until you're ready to externally react with Vaishnav etiquette, then you just don't externally react until your mind, and you can reveal your mind to a more senior Vaishnava, but you have to make sure it's not when you're extraordinarily agitated, because then you're the tendency is to just complain about the other person and to criticize the other person, and that's not going to help them, and it's definitely not going to help you. It's only going to harm your bhakti. I don't need to go into detail. Everyone knows that, the horribly harmful effects of Vaishnava aparad and blaspheming the devotees. So yeah, thank you for your question.
It's number one offense. So yeah, you are right. So yeah, thank you for good advice, Mataji. And it is, as you said, patience is very important. I have seen a couple of places. It is very hurtful, but it's a matter of time. The devotee comes back to you telling what has happened. That is surprising. Not in your place, it is somewhere else. So maybe after many years, somebody will come back, this is what happened. You might have forgotten by that time.
Yeah.
So that is really wonderful. Just sometimes you have to have patience. And another thing, Mataji, is probably, when we are in a group or things, some silly things, people, when somebody tries to teach someone, that is often misunderstood, as if somebody is trying to control or something. That is especially, of course, somebody has to be very elevated to just bring it the point, then people will follow. But when somebody wants good faith, try to teach someone, this is the way it should do that. But at that time, things are often taken negatively, then they try to react in a different ways. They just present something as if to teach you that this is what happened. I saw one example, I kept quiet, but this is what is, I was not thinking that way, but even if you tell in good faith, nobody are so elevated, it is in a group to develop someone, but because of our false ego or something, people try to misinterpret everything somebody takes. I take it as offensive. So that is what somehow, how do we avoid, it comes to everybody. As you told, the moment I take a decision, what is favorable to me, I am right, other person is wrong. Even if somebody is trying to teach, misinterpreting certain things is very difficult to avoid in this, type of situation. Because I am so, again, conditioned, I think what I am doing is right. Somebody says, this is the deity should be worshipped, this is what you have to follow. She has no bad intention, but sometimes some other person takes it different way. No, I know, or this is what is, you are angry at me, you are talking. So that type of misunderstanding, how do we avoid, Mataji? So
yeah, that's something a little different. That's like that's just someone hasn't necessarily offended us, but we feel offended. That's a different, yeah. So like, if someone corrects us and we feel, oh, how are they correcting me? That's just the false ego's reaction. And forgiveness actually has to go beyond the false ego's desire to be right.
Yeah.
So even if you are right, you can still forgive someone, and those are little minor things. If someone is correcting us,
very minor, yeah,
that's actually if someone's correcting us and we have difficulty being corrected, that's actually our problem. It's not their problem, right? If we're attached to being right, even if we are right and we're attached to being right, that is a problem of our false ego. If I'm having a discussion with someone on book distribution and they're telling me their God is the only God and my God is not God, and I become angry and whatever, fighting with them. Actually, if I'm trying to just prove that I'm right and you're wrong, and my motivation is just to say that I'm right and you're wrong, that's just fanatical religion, even if it's in the name of Krishna consciousness, right? So that's the real problem is with us, with our false ego that just wants to be right. So sometimes we just have to, swallow, eat humble pie, and just, Vaisheshika Guru has a beautiful saying that he likes to recite to himself, and he encourages his disciples and followers to do the same. This mantra that he likes to say, this English mantra is, I live to be corrected. Meaning being in this mood of like, I'm not always right. I have so much to learn in order to grow and become the devotee I'm meant to grow. So please correct me. That mood, like the false ego doesn't want to be corrected, but encouraging the real ego of being like, I live to be corrected. So if we're in that mood, what can I learn in every, if someone's trying to teach me something, let me see in what ways may they be right? Might they be right? Not necessarily that everything people try to teach us is always right, but that we consider it, So, and then Mataji put in the chat, I do need to get going. It's way over.
So this is the last question probably you can answer. Sorry, Mataji, to keep waiting.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Many questions will be there, but it's a wonderful topic. We'll hear next time remaining questions.
Yeah, but Mataji says how to stop being vulnerable. That is I don't know your situation, so it's hard to comment on it. But again, I just want to say that being vulnerable means it's actually a good quality to be sensitive. But then also, if we are sensitive, then we're more easily hurt. So especially if you're a more sensitive type, like I am actually, to be honest with you, then it's important not to put walls up around your heart, not to harden your heart to try to protect yourself, but to put up boundaries around your soft heart. And again, I just want to emphasize the importance of having boundaries. If you're vulnerable, you can say, I am okay with being treated this way, and I'm not okay with being treated that way. You know why? Because it hurts me, because I'm sensitive. So please don't treat me that way. You may not have any negative intention, or you may have negative intention, but I'm not going to stand for it. You know, I can't, because it only hurts me and it causes me to be angry towards you, and I don't want to be angry towards you, you know. So I guess that's just like, again, going back to this point of if you find yourself to be very vulnerable, that you should continue to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable really allows us to create deep, loving connections with people. But you can also choose who to be vulnerable with. You don't have to open your heart up and allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of someone that's going to take advantage of you or treat you in a cruel way. So you shouldn't actually ever want to stop being vulnerable, but you should keep your vulnerability for those relationships where you know that you can really trust someone, that they are your well-wisher. You know, you don't want to be vulnerable around someone that isn't your genuine well-wisher. You want to be vulnerable around someone that's your well-wisher. And even if they sometimes have some anarthas that flare up, we forgive those, and they should forgive ours. So thank you, Vaishnavas, so much for coming and listening, and for your beautiful questions. I know there's probably so many more questions, but it's getting late here in New York.
Yeah, so Mataji, yeah, that is fine, Mataji. Thank you so much. And so Sudhir Priya Mataji, are you still there, Mataji? Somebody
Yes,
joined
Prabhuji.
Connecticut. Mataji, you have last word for Mataji before you close.
Thank you so much, Mataji. It was wonderful to hear about, so many things that we should learn. And like you said, Vaisheshik Prabhu's comment, live to be corrected. So as long as we're open to correction, we don't feel that hurt. So thank you so much. That was a lot of food for thought. I'm definitely going to try to practice some of the things you've suggested. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm very grateful to share the extraordinary lessons that I've learned from my spiritual master, from so many great Vaishnavas who I've had the opportunity to associate with and learn from, and Mahatma Prabhu as well. And I'm just grateful that I can share that with others, because I want all of us to flourish in a loving community of devotees all over the world. So thank you.
So, Mataji, that is like Vasudev Datta's mood, so wonderful to hear that, so well-wisher of everybody. That's really wonderful. And Mataji, one last question. This is a quick question. I'm guessing you are a disciple of Mahatma Prabhu?
No, I'm not actually.
Radha Maharaj, or who is your spiritual master, Mataji? I wanted to ask you in the beginning.
My spiritual master is His Holiness Radhanath Swami.
That was my first guess earlier, but yeah, thank you.
I hope that you all will pray for me, that I can actually become a sincere disciple.
Thank you, Mataji. So please pray for us. We always pray for you. And now it is time for Mataji to take leave. And please unmute all of you. Say big Hari Bol 3 times, opening up your heart, so that you can get chance.
Small, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol,
Hari Bol,
Hari
Hari
Bol,
Bol, Hari Bol. Tulsi Maharani ki, Mataji ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.